Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We begin in the name of Allah, whose grace, guidance and mercy we seek in this and in all matters. Blessings and salutations on our beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his descendants and all his companions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for joining me, Anisa, on Get Real with Islamic Care Line. Today we're going to be discussing the scourge of divorce. And with me I have Atiya Saluji, who's going to help us explore the topic.
Assalamu alaikum, Anisa, and thank you for having me here today.
Walaikum salam.
Anisa, like you said, I'm here to join you, to speak to you about something that nobody expects to ever happen to them. But yeah, life happens and you have to carry on.
Okay, just for starters, it sounds like it's something that you've, in a way, or lots of people, I'm sure, share the same feeling around it being something that we have to deal with. It's become almost part of life.
Yes.
And that in itself, as I even just say it, doesn't sound very right, if I were to say.
Yeah, but then what is right? Like, the thing is, life today is so fast-paced and so different, and these things happen. It's part of life. We have to accept it. And like, you know, I think we need to redefine what is right again, because divorce is not then something also that's wrong also. It's just part of life.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go a little bit back, right? And I'm going to ask you, so what would you consider to be some of the most challenging experiences of, or what are the most challenging aspects of getting divorced?
I think post-divorce, it's about you know, trying to understand that it's not a stigma that, or a label that you need to place on yourself, because society brands it as such. It's not something I necessarily need to stick on myself, but it takes some time and it takes strength to understand that, you know, to peel that label away and understand that this does not need to define who I am. So that, and another thing I think would also be, you grow up with all these dreams and all these hopes, and then you get engaged or you get fixed or whatever, and your life goals as a girl, and especially in our community, in our society, you sort of focus your goals on what life will be like once you're married. You know, that ultimate dream, and you grow up with this. When you're little, you have these ideas of, you know, when I'm this age I'll have my child, when I'm this age I'll get married, whatever. But then this happens, and you have to sort of step back and realize, wait, who am I again? And, you know, sort of find yourself again and learn to dream again, but learn to dream alone. So it grows you in a sense.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing you say, you're talking about a lot of shattered dreams and ideas, shattered outlooks and expectations. And then also in terms of dealing with it, what you're also saying is it takes a lot of restructuring.
Yes.
And a lot of change and a lot of stepping back, and like you use the word redefining everything around you, and start looking at things differently. Okay, we're going to look a little bit later in our program about what has changed for you. But for now, what I'd also like to ask is, what are some of, and also to shift the focus a little bit on a more positive approach, what would you say are some of the opportunities that became available to you, because we spoke about change and restructuring?
I think there's a lot. It's your mindset and how you look at it, but there's a lot, because you learn to find who you are again, and you become a more authentic version of yourself, more authentic than you've ever been. And for once, you finally let go of this thing where, you know, I need to apologize for who I am, and you don't. And you finally can take ownership of who you are and understand that in accepting who you are, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone should take offense to it, and you're not disrespecting them by being authentically yourself. And I think that helps a lot. And wow, I think there's a lot of positive that comes from that, from you're free. It's like you have your freedom again. You have all this time to do what you want, be what you want. It is not to stop you. Nobody to halt your dreams or anything. Just be yourself.
Okay. Would you say, has it been for you, in a way, a fresh start?
Definitely.
But we also know that lots of people don't always get a fresh start, and sometimes that would include people who have children, or with it comes other changes and challenges. And in terms of the immediate dynamics of when you get divorced and all the things that unfold at that particular time, what the experiences for you at that time was like?
It's a roller coaster of emotions, and you go through so much. And apart from yourself, what I think hurts a lot is that you those closest to you are now thrown into this journey with you. And while trying to balance your own emotions, you're trying not to, to help them along your own journey while trying to balance yourself at the same time. And it's about like, those closest to you, I suppose, then again would form your strong support structure. But then there's others, and you put into an unforgiving society. And like I have a personal experience of one. I was at a funeral, and it was just I was separated prior to my divorce, and there were two ladies sitting behind me, and they knew who I was sitting in front of them. But like they'll openly talk about you, not having the guts, to come up to you and say, hey, did this happen to you? Are you okay? Or I heard this about you. Is it true? If you really want to know. But sitting there behind you and then making their own, hey, who's she? And what she did. And, that's why she's getting divorced. And, so you deal with a lot of things like that. There's positive and negative to it on both sides.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you got some people who judged you,
yes,
some people who showed insensitivity to the experience. Do you have any thoughts around why you think they responded that way to you?
I think it's very easy in society to always vilify a woman, to make the woman. People need they need a villain, so you become this bad guy in someone else's story. You become, they need. It's for them. It's a story. It's nothing else. It's about, these two were together, this is what happened, they need a story, and they need characters to fill that story. And society is such, unfortunately, that to vilify a woman is always just easier. And so I think that's most often than not what it is.
All right. And do you feel that that's relevant specifically to instances of divorce? Does that create the perfect setting to do just that?
Yeah, because for people, sometimes divorce is not something. In lots of cases, it may be, it has a juicy story or whatever. But in some cases, there isn't this whole way it had to have some juicy story behind it. But for people, they like sensationalism and they like stuff like that. So, like I said, they try to formulate their own narrative of your life. And
what effect did that have on you?
It took me a while, to be honest. It took me a while to step. I was always this very confident, bubbly person, but when going through divorce and stuff, it kind of changed my personality, and I became more introverted, to a point where, especially after the incident I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't just go out, especially within my own community. I wouldn't just go out like that. I wouldn't even just go, for instance, to buy bread and milk. You wouldn't just see me doing stuff like going out where people don't know me, and that it was much easier for me. But it took me a while to face people, even though I felt, I didn't do anything wrong. But the fact that people victimize you, or even the fact that people look at you with pity, sometimes you don't want to be looked at with pity. It's just something that's happening in your life. You don't need someone's pity. You don't need their judgments or anything. So you sort of stay away. And then you have to remind yourself that, hey, if they react to me like that, doesn't mean I need to change my whole life, doesn't mean I need to stop living because of what they think of me. Like, if that's what they think, then they're welcome to think what they think,
But I think what you're also saying is that it's been a process for you. It's been an emotional process. It's one where you said very earlier in the program that it's an opportunity. There's lots of growth that came with it. It is a fresh start. But I'm also hearing you saying that before that came about, there were lots of less than pleasant experiences. And I'm sure maybe you'd like to share with the viewers some of the emotions that the experience brought out for you. Some of the things that you had to go through or face personally.
I think there's a lot of guilt, and that doesn't necessarily stem from always something that you feel you did or you shouldn't do, but a lot of it is guilt imposed on you by society, and at that point you're so vulnerable that whatever those around you say, it affects you, it affects your mental state, and it affects who you are. And I feel like it is a process, it's a whole journey that you go through, but did anything good ever come without struggle, you know? So it's something, and in it builds you spiritually to such an extent that had you not been through this, you wouldn't have come out the person you are at the end. So it's only at the end of the journey do you understand the purpose of it, and you understand there was beauty in it. But yes, at the time you see no beauty in it. At the time, there even maybe someone positively may come up to you and say, you know what, you're so strong and you're such an inspiration, and the way you're handling this, you have so much of strength and courage. But at that point, there are moments where you just want to scream, you know what, I don't want to be strong anymore. All I want to be is just happy. I'll give you the strength, take the strength, but leave me. I just want to be happy. If that means me not being strong, then that's fine. But life is that you have to accept, and that's part of who you are. And it's not as easy as me taking it and passing it on to you. It's mine to bear, and it's mine to deal with. And I need to remind myself that this is something that I need to deal with. If I'm going to pack it away, it's not going to help me, and it's not going to go away. And so that's how you push yourself along this journey, and how you reach the end. And I don't even know if there is an end to it. I think it's a constant state of growth you go through. But you use each experience from the past to push you forward and propel you for something better in the future.
And in fact, the way you described it now, I think it reinforces that, you know, and maybe I don't know how many viewers know this, but after death, divorce is one of the most traumatic, it's and stressful life experience that you can have. And whatever you're describing doesn't even fully reflect, I'm sure, some of your very deep personal experiences along the way.
Definitely. You know, there was someone who came to me once and they told me that, how are you doing? Because I've heard that divorce is worse than death. And at the time I kind of got it, but it was prior to my divorce, just prior to my divorce. But it was only once I was finally divorced and the divorce came and it was final that, you know, I remembered what the person said, and I realized, you know what, at this point for me it feels that maybe perhaps death is difficult. I've dealt with death of loved ones, but it's something that's beyond your control to some extent, you understand, and it's something that, you know, you may have parted, it's a thing that the person left you, not because they had a choice or you had a choice, but to lose someone who you had a relationship with and you formed this bond with. I think it's far more difficult to lose someone that's alive than it is to lose them to death.
Okay, we're going to pick up on that again after our break. So join us after our short break and we'll pick up with Atiya on the scourge of divorce. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Get Real with Islamic Care Line on ITV. Okay, welcome back, Atiya, also to our next segment. Atiya, when we left before the break, we mentioned how traumatic divorce is as a life experience, and we did a little bit of comparison to death. What were some of your copings? How would you say you dealt with the divorce as a whole?
Firstly and most importantly, without a doubt, I think if I didn't have religion or spiritual grounding, for me it's Islam. Like if I didn't have that, I don't know how I would have coped, because there were times that I felt like, you know, there's no human that even though you're surrounded by all this love and all this support, but none of them understand truly what it is you're going through. And for everyone, it's just like, oh, you're better off, or don't worry, things will be better. And I understand it's all positive support, but there are times where I just felt, you know what, you don't understand. And having a creator, knowing you have a creator to just go to, sit on the musalla, and if it means not saying a word but crying your eyes out, that's what you do. And you get up and you feel better. Or just sitting there and talking to your creator and praying to him, or opening the Quran and just finding something. And there's always something that, there's never been a time that I was going through something and I didn't open the Quran, and it so happened that the ayah that I'm reading had some
like it was talking.
Yeah, as if it was meant for you, at that moment. And the comfort that brings you, I don't think any human can give you that comfort. So definitely, firstly, it was having religion and finding contentment in understanding the decree of Allah, understanding that nothing happens without His will, believing in Qadr and destiny. And another thing was, what helped a lot was, I had a very good support structure. I had a very strong network around me of my parents, my siblings, aunties, uncles, like family, friends. That there was never a time, even during my iddat, that I was just alone. There's always someone coming in and out, or someone, even if it means just sitting and not saying anything, but sitting with me. Or and then another really important thing that made me learn from that, and allows me to help others now in that sense, is that there were times where there were women who I didn't know very well on a personal basis or anything, but they'd been through similar experiences, or they sat in iddat for whatever reasons, be it they became widows or divorced or whatever. And they took the time to come sit with me and speak to me just of the process of what they felt at that point, that I was now in iddat, and explained to me, what, I felt this, and maybe you will feel this, and it helped, because sometimes you feel like you're losing your mind. You feel like, can I possibly grieve for another person to this extent? Like, is there something wrong with me? Or like sitting in iddat, even it's a blessing, but at the same time, it's not for the faint-hearted. So having them come there and reassure you that, it's normal. I've been there, and that's what I was. I experienced this. So what you're feeling is fine, but look at where I am today. And it gives you hope to kind of look forward to, if, she's been there, and look where she is today, I'll get there. So that helped me a lot, yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add around what your experience of the iddat period was like, aside from what you've said now?
I think prior to having sat in iddat, it was something I was really, I'm a person that likes to be out and about and always busy, and so it was a big concern for me, how well I manage it. And when the time came and I needed to sit in iddat, I come from a very spiritual family, they're very spiritually inclined, and they sat me down and they told me, what, do this properly and you'll see the benefits in it. And I swear, when I sat in it, only did I understand the beauty of it. And I understood how, our Creator understands our nature as women. That it's very difficult. I wouldn't have coped. Had I just gotten divorced and been thrust into an unforgiving society again, I wouldn't have coped. But it sort of gives you this shelter and this shield from, you're surrounded only by those who love you. You're surrounded only by positivity and love, and just that quietness to contemplate, to reorder your thoughts, to plan ahead. What next? This happened. What next? But it gives you that time to just wait it out. Let the storms outside that are raging currently, calm down. So by the time you go out, emotionally you healed, not completely, but you sort of strengthened by it, and you're more composed when you leave there. So it was only in sitting in it did I see the beauty in it, and to the point where, I had people, there wasn't a week that I sat in it, that there wasn't someone or the other that came and you were like, it's so unfair, why does a woman have to sit in iddat? Why are you sitting in iddat? And in today's time, you don't need to do this. And there was not a week that I didn't have one guest at least who told me that. But I understood where they're coming from, because before that I would have thought something along the line as well. But I sat there and I couldn't explain to you, to the point where, I had a friend come to me, she sat in iddat, and she told me that by the time this thing ends, when I was in it, and by the time it came to its end, I was sad for it to end, and I didn't want it to end, and I was afraid to let it end. And I looked at her at that point, it was the beginning of my iddat, and I looked at her and I was sort of confused, like, what do you mean you said that you could go out now and stuff? But when I reached that point, I found her and I fully understood, and I told her, what, I get it. I don't want it to end. The peace that I found here, the contentment that I found, I'm scared to let go. That level of spirituality you reach in that time alone, it's basically you and your creator alone. And when else in life are you going to get that chance, to just reconnect with him and reconnect with yourself?
I know on numerous occasions you've mentioned that the divorce is such a personal experience, and you've said people don't understand and they don't say the right thing and all of that. But what also, as you were talking, some thoughts came to mind, and I was wondering about anger.
Definitely. There's moments that you are so angry with yourself, angry with those around you. Well, none of it later on, you look and none of that anger makes sense, but I suppose it's part of this process, because you're angry with yourself, you're angry with your ex-spouse, you're angry that, couldn't I see it coming? Like, didn't I know better? And angry with those around you, like, couldn't you tell me this before? Like, couldn't you tell me what I'm getting into? But it's part of it. And yeah, like when you look back, some of that anger actually, you want to laugh at it because you were angry at such silly things. And another thing I think, for me, what I feel is that, going through divorce, going through marriage first, especially in our Indian communities, when you get married, you sort of adopt a whole other family structure, and there's so many sub-relationships that start to form between you and other people. It's not just that one relationship. So when you get divorced and you lose that one relationship, it's all these other relationships now that sort of disintegrate because people feel they need to choose a side. And it comes out when you're going through this divorce, and you feel angry at some of them that, I trusted you so much, or like you were my friend, or I confided in you, or like,
it's all of a sudden you wake up and you see things differently because...
And it's like you're seeing people that you knew your whole life, you're seeing them for their true self all of a sudden. Like you're saying, you just wake up with new eyes. So
there's two other words that come to mind when I listen to you talk, and the one is responsibility. When you compared death and divorce, you spoke about death is different, it comes from Allah, you let go of the person, but having to let go of someone who's still alive, and balancing to what extent do I take responsibility for the divorce. Was it something relevant for you?
No, of course it definitely was relevant, because there's always there's it takes two hands to clap. So in a marriage as well, and in breakdown of the marriage, it's the two of you together, and how much both of you are going to put in to make it work or let it go. But it's also so you sort of take responsibility in that, in deciding, this was best for me, and you have to understand that was you taking your agency and deciding what was good for you and what was not. But at the same time, like I told you earlier, with death, the way society responds to you, if you had to be married and your husband had to pass away, the way society would respond to you now as a widow is completely different to the way, yes, it's more acceptable, exactly. Whereas now, instead of the victim, you're the villain. Without most people knowing the background of the story or knowing whatever, automatically, in most cases, the woman's the villain,
I think what's important to remember, and lots of people judge people by allocating innocence and fault and blame, but marriage, as most people who are married know, that sometimes it's just about difference, it's about incompatibility, it's about different diverse expectations, it's about family dynamics, and all of those things complicate it, and it's not necessarily about who's right and who's wrong.
Exactly.
And for me, it's about people growing from the experience and saying that, I made mistakes the first time around, but I've grown and I've learned, and I'm hoping that in going forward, yes, I would do things differently. Now, speaking of doing differently, now looking back, is there anything in your coping or any of your actions from the time that you got divorced that you felt you would have done differently?
I don't think actually I would have. I think maybe I would have had less. I would have given less importance to the opinions of others at that point, because I think that weighed me down a lot in terms of healing and coping. Once I was able to let go of people's opinions of me and what are they saying of me, or it allowed me to heal much faster. But in terms of anything else that I could have done differently, I think personally, you know, I love with this thing that if I can go to bed at night with my conscience clear between me and my Creator, you know, and I know between me and Him, there's nothing weighing me down. I mean, then I'm fine. But the minute I get into bed and I know, you know what, I think I said something wrong to this person, or I think I did this, I know it's something I need to wake up in the next morning and I need to fix. And with this, it's one of those things that I feel like I'm so content with the way I've been through things and the way I feel I handle things. I don't think there's something I would have did differently. And ultimately, I think I'm a really firm believer in understanding the decree of Allah and accepting it. And once you can accept that there's nothing you could have done to change your destiny, it was written. There's nothing you could have done. So,
okay, for me that's an interesting one, because we try to balance what is Allah's will and what. Where does the line draw? Where do we draw the line between saying I take responsibility and this is what Allah has willed for us as human beings, right? But also it's about what you're saying is about making peace with and letting.
It's about knowing in your own mind and heart that the effort you put in. If you know you put in enough effort, then and then couple that with the decree of Allah and with destiny, then you understand clearly. You know, you're able to find peace in it. But the minute, you know, like you said, you can't sit here and say, yeah, it was meant to happen. But you know, you didn't put in any effort. You know, I did this wrong and I did this wrong and I could have changed this and I shouldn't have said this or whatever. Then obviously it doesn't work like that. You have to tie your camel at the end. Yeah.
Okay, how has your experience changed your outlook on, number one, on marriage, and how has it changed your outlook on the future?
I think I'm very much more pragmatic now in my approach to life. I don't have all these, you know, these ideas about before you get married, before you ever married, you have this whole idea of what marriage will be like. You know, it's challenging, and you know there's compromise from both sides and stuff, but you never understand the realities of it until you. And so I think going in now, like to the future and looking forward to it in the future, I'm not averse to the idea of marriage, but neither am I idealistic or you know, that has to be the be all and end all, or that defines me as a woman. I'm past that it needs, especially in Indian society now, I'm past that. Being married or not married is what defines me. There's so much more to define me as a woman. There's so much more. And yeah, and like another thing is, I think if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that if something seems too good to be true, it usually is. And that's like something I'm going to take forward with me, you know, yeah.
It's about sounding a little bit more realistic and practical. Okay, last words to our viewers, Atiya. Any message that you'd like to convey?
Yes, to those that are going through this or thinking of going to it, I fully stand by the fact that, you know, if you are suffering in a marriage or you both are unhappy, there's no need to continue in your life like that. You don't have to because society says so, or because to conform to the box that society needs to place you. You know, it happened to two of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's daughters went through divorce. And if it happened in his household, you know, and it wasn't a stigma then, why do you need to let that stigma get you now? So don't let people get you down. Do what you know Islamically is correct for you, and for yourself is what will make you happy, and let that guide your decision.
Jazakallah so much, Atiya, for taking the time and sharing us such a personal experience with us. And Jazakallah to all our viewers for joining us on Get Real with Islamic Care Line. We hope that you will join us next time. Assalamu alaikum.